We've been apparently encouraging people to quit.
That's the feedback you've been getting?
Let me clarify that real fast. Dame
I'm
is
just
not.
saying, last week, Dave, literally, when I started talking,
No,
or 2 weeks ago, when I was like, keep going, Dave was
no,
like, nah,
no.
folks need to quit. And I was like, for sure.
What up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast. I forget Payne's tagline, but we talk about stuff that you're not going to find in any music book. And today we have a special guest today. We don't normally have guests, but I made a post the other day. She's never commented on anything that
That's
I've
not true,
posted
Dave.
before. She definitely
That's
never
a
wanted to
lie.
come on here and talk about
That
anything.
is also a lie.
But somehow I triggered something, and we need to talk about the Rex Live Raj post that I made. But before that, I just want to introduce Tai St-Louis. How you doing?
I'm doing good. And you know I'm a MEC day one. Like I've been around and commenting and since it was just you. So don't tell these people this lie.
Well, before we get started, just want to remind folks this episode is brought to you by Two Lost. If you want 3 months free music distribution, go to twolost.com, use the code MEC, get 3 free months. Let me know how it goes. Would love your feedback, comments, suggestions. And as always, we want to start with sharing our wins for the week. So Ty, we want to hear a win from you, but I'll give you a second to think about it, and I'll go to
Okay.
Erinn first. Share your win from the past week, then go Payne, Ty, then I'll finish it, and then we'll jump right into the topic.
I think my win for this week is that it seems like grants are opening back up. And one of my company in Austin, I would say close to $100,000 of our revenue over the last year over the last year and a half has been grants. And then, when the new administration came, a lot of federal funding was cut. So even corporate sponsorships were degrading because they weren't getting their funding and just all sorts of stuff. But as of the last week, I've been invited to apply for several grants, and then I'm seeing more grants that I've been a part of come back online. So I'm excited about that because my position in the market is better for things like this, for me to get more grants, but also the fact that they're available again. So shout out to the funding and people coming out now and not being scared to offer the creatives the money. So that's my win for the week.
Get that free money. Free money. Payne, what you got for us? He got a new hat. Payne, is that your win, your new hat?
This is an old hat. My loss is that I need a haircut, so I'm wearing a hat for once. But imagine, I would have been the odd one out had I not just put this hat on.
It's
My
true.
win is I'm at 356 patrons now. So shout out to everyone that joined the Patreon. I had no idea what to anticipate when I started it. Man, I've really only harassed folks minimally to join, so maybe I should step that up. I've sent out one email about it ever. The rest has just been me mentioning it in YouTube videos. So thank you. If you've done that, thank you so much. Patreon.com/DJ Payne1. It's still open, obviously.
Remind people, what do you call it again?
I'm calling it Beat Campus.
Beat Campus. Get all your beat tips, workout tips, nutrition tips from
No
Payne
nutrition tips.
in the
I eat a lot.
All right, Ty, we gave you a second to think about it. What's your win for the past week? It don't have to be amazing. It could be woke up today feeling good,
That's definitely a win. But I will say, so I'm working on the rollout for my first project of Haitian music that I've ever worked on in my career, which I'm really, really excited about. And the artist is Baki. And his first single, Invincible, came out a little over a week ago, and we just hit 2 million views on YouTube. So really excited about the next couple of weeks. The album comes out on September 12th, and it's Haitian music, but like with a lot of Afro beats and Amapiano influences. So I think it's going to be a really good opportunity to introduce Haitian music to people that don't usually consume Haitian music.
Dope. Did you say the artist name? I didn't catch it in the beginning if you did.
His name is Baki, Baky.
Baki, there it is. And I guess my win from the week is I think I told people that we're working on a scripted digital music series, and we've started writing actual episodes and started planting the seeds with people in the industry that I potentially want to partner, people that I want to amplify it, sponsor it. And I'm just getting even some good initial feedback. And I haven't even really, all I did was present the idea. I haven't even shown them like a pitch deck or anything. So I feel like, I feel like we got good momentum going into creating it. So that's going to be some exciting stuff. But we don't have that much time with Ty. Ty has to go, but Ty wanted to talk about last week. I brought up Rex Life Raj post where he was talking about there was not really any media infrastructure in the Bay Area. So we probably did about 20 minutes on that on the last episode. And then I followed up and I think I did like a 2.5 minute video on Instagram, kind of continuing that conversation. And Ty, I'll let you just take it from there because I think most people know what my stance was and may hopefully watch the last episode. So, feel free to take the floor. What you didn't agree with. We argue all the time on here, so it's all good.
So, my background, Dame knows this. I think Dame knows this. I'm not sure because we met when I was working in PR. But my original really start in this was as a journalist. I wrote for allhiphop.com for like 7 or 8 years. And then when I left All Hip Hop, I went over to Gossip, and I've written for like, all of I was blessed to be able to write for all of the legacy hip hop publications in some form or fashion, I feel like, over the last few years. And so when I was watching your video, I was actually in the middle of commenting how much I agreed until the very end. So yes, I do agree with you that there is not a infrastructure for media for that's supporting especially Black artists. Definitely not an infrastructure that supports local artists in any city, right? So Atlanta, I think part of the reason why Atlanta kind of feels like it's lost its grip on the music or on hip hop the way that it had it for a minute is because there aren't enough platforms to champion the artists. And that is something that's happening everywhere. And the reason why I was agreeing with you at first is because I really love that people are starting to notice the same thing that I've been kind of watching over the last year, which is this. When I first started writing in 2003, 2004, you had to be let in, right? There were still gatekeepers in journalism. You didn't necessarily have to have a journalism degree, but you had to get into somebody's building and somebody had to vet that you were qualified to comment on the culture, to rate the culture, to recommend music, so on and so forth, to be able to interview somebody or whatever, right? So the people who didn't necessarily have a journalism degree, when they came into these publications, they started it as interns, whether you were answering mail, whether you were just kind of sitting in on editorial meetings and so on and so forth. And then somewhere around, I would say, '07, maybe '06, '07, when with the advent of like WordPress and Blogspot and all these other things, people were now able to just set up their own, right? And so the person who used to be like really excited about sending a tip to All Hip Hop and having that story be picked up now could post it on their own blog and send it out to everybody. It took away a certain level of it democratized it for everyone, which I think when it comes to media, and this doesn't just apply to music, I think we're seeing it everywhere right now. The democratization, I insist on using big words early in the morning, I'm sorry, but the democratization of media becomes a problem because the person with the biggest platform or the loudest voice doesn't necessarily know what they're talking about. And so what I first saw with the blog era, because I've always kind of gone back and forth between PR and journalism, was that let's say you started around '06, by like 2010, you would go to people's blogs and it would be like, hey, I'm graduating school this year, so I'm not going to be able to keep it up, or I went and got a job or whatever. So you saw a lot of these blogs disappear. And I feel like we have the same thing happen now with podcasting, because it isn't as difficult to get into. It isn't as difficult for you to find an audience. You have, one great wild take on social media, and then now all of a sudden you're the voice that everybody's going to. And unfortunately, we've gotten to the age where that old adage that there's no such thing as bad publicity is really holding true. I still think that there is such a thing as bad publicity, but the hot takes get shared whether they're valid or not. Right. And it feels like the ones that are invalid get shared even more. So now that person with the invalid take becomes, and I don't want to say culture commentator because it's going to sound like I'm, aiming that at somebody specific, but I'm not. But that person gets given that title or gets recognized as an authority that doesn't necessarily have the background to be that authority, right? So I feel like we are now at a point where we can create a new structure that somewhere meets in the middle, where it's not as exclusionary as it was back in, the early days, because there's more platforms. And so, obviously we're never going to go back to a day where like New York media is the only media that gets to talk about anything. We do need the local media more than ever, especially because in a lot of cities, the independent journalism platforms that used to cover us, like here in Atlanta, it was Creative Loafing. In New York, it was the Village Voice. All of those platforms, for the most part, have been defunded, have lost a lot of their funding, and so they're not able to support the artists in the same way. But I do still feel like the people telling the stories have to come from a certain place. And I don't know if that's always going to necessarily be the artist, right? It's hard to be impartial when you're the artist. It's hard to catch certain nuances when you're not necessarily a storyteller or a journalist. And I do think that on the flip side of that, as somebody that came out of started my career in the late 90s, early 2000s, I'm always in awe of all the cool stuff that happened that we've never documented. Like, I've never seen a video of that Jay-Z Summer Jam screen. I remember reading about it in a magazine because I was in Florida when it happened. Or was that? I think I was in Florida when it happened. But I remember reading about it in the magazine, but I've never seen video of that performance when Jay-Z put up Nas on the Summer Jam screen. And that was the first time that he performed Takeover, and he stopped right at the no. But I've never seen a video of it, right? I worked with DJ Mars and Maurice Garland, who's another great journalist here in Atlanta, and Brill and I on a book called The Art Behind the Tape, which was a book about mixtape cover art. And I couldn't tell you how many of the most iconic DJs that we spoke to who were telling us that like their biggest mixtapes, their biggest moments in their careers, they don't even have a copy of it. So I think it's really, really important for us to identify and elevate and support the people that are very passionate about documenting the culture. And that documentation could be the old school, it could be the new school, it could be the person. I'm 45 years old. I can't tell you who the hot rappers are in Atlanta unless my niece puts me on. And every time I think I found a new song, it's something that she's known for months. So I, as a journalist, am somebody who really, as somebody with a big passion for documentation, I want to support the kids that can tell me what's hot in Atlanta right now, that can tell me, who the biggest DJs are on campus, or that can explain to me like what nightlife looks like right now in Atlanta, right? Because Atlanta nightlife is has gone through so many interesting iterations. I would love for somebody to tell me what college students are doing right now. I'm not going to be the one to go find out, because as useful as I look, I don't think they want me in that party, right? So I do agree with you that we have the power to create the infrastructure, and it's very needed. But in the creation of infrastructure, whether it's media or anything else having to do with Black music, we have to make sure that we're putting the right people in the right places. So that was it. I was just saying,
So only disagreeing with like, because I'm trying to remember exactly how I phrased it in the video. Basically, I said like, you have to do it yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not,
Yeah.
and when I'm talking about it, like I'm not saying that Rex Life Raj should be the curator of culture in the Bay Area, even if it's just like him, Pilo, LaRussell, whoever else, like getting together and just having a platform, or not even, and maybe it's just them putting out, a coalition of 10 artists, putting out a song a week and having a video or doing freestyles and just showing. So but I also think we got an artist waiting for what you're talking about. They may be waiting forever. right? Because we don't have. I'm trying to think of the young people with integrity. I would put Nyla in that boat. Nyla Simone, like she's, she cares about the culture, has a lot of integrity in how she moves. There's not that many people like that, and I think if you wait for those people to be supported and funded and propped up, like you probably gonna miss your window. Like who's next up?
Couple things, and I'm sorry, my dog decided that she wants to do a cameo today. She don't have no noises until I'm on the phone. But okay, so do you know the story of how A3C started?
No.
Brian Knott, the original founder of A3C here in Atlanta, had like 3 or 4 artists that he loved who never performed in Atlanta. So he booked the Loft, and you've been here in Atlanta, so you know what size the Loft is. It's like maybe 1,500 people. He booked the Loft, and he booked all 4 of those artists to come down, right? That person that we're waiting for, we don't necessarily, I mean, it's a journalism school everywhere. Like every single college. If it's a college in your neighborhood, it's a journalism school. Matter of fact, it's a journalism program in that high school. There's so many kids out there with a camera that love having a camera, right? I don't think that I think we have to rethink what we consider to be a valid platform. I think that's one part of it. I also think that we have to, like you said, I do agree with having to go forth and create it yourself, but I think that it's just being very thoughtful about creating things that can outlive us, because I think that that's how we kind of got to where we are right now, is that there's been a lot of great movements that have started by people that once they got tired of doing it, that was it. It was a wrap and the thing folded, right? Here in Atlanta, we had a collective called Greenmont Park, and one of the founders passed recently. His name's Corey Davis. He's an artist, like a visual artist. But like when Greenmont Park was popping, it was all these kids that were kind of trying to figure their place out. And then once everybody figured their place out, they kind of moved on for that platform. And it might just be because it's not financially viable, right? So maybe, it's a matter of, number one, we got to clear the space, because it's harder for you and I to figure out who else is out there with a valid voice, because there's so much noise, right? And we give access to so many people and we promote so many people. And because just like with music, we're having to pay to compete, the person that can't necessarily fund it can't necessarily grow it, right? So I think that's one part of it. The other part of it is, I think the other part that I disagreed with you about was when you said that these platforms don't have the power that they used to. And that is true. However, again, the problem is the lames that are in the way. And that's always the problem, right?
I'm sorry.
Like
You said the problem is what? I didn't catch that.
the lames, he wanted me to call people lame again. The lames that are in the way.
Oh, I thought you said the lanes. My bad. But
No,
see,
lames.
that's the, well, one, like I'm not trying to be the solution for this problem. I got too much other stuff to do. But
I am.
and that's dope. But I also think, like, as soon as you get somebody that maybe starts out with, acting like they want to support artists or whatever, they start to get a little attention, and then the focus becomes them, and then it's all about them. It's like a DJ Academics, or like the focus is no longer the platform, it's the person.
Right.
So
I agree.
how do
And
you
that's
stop? I see that happening so much. I would before I start investing in something, I would have to be super confident that this person is not going to morph into something different and start soaking up that attention and just,
right.
you know.
Well, I mean, again, I think, and this is actually for me a larger conversation that extends to everything, right? So you work in distribution, I do too. I work at 1 RPM. And one of the things that I
Edit
see,
that out, Paint. No, I'm just playing.
listen, I had to say it because it's like your 2 Lost is right behind you, and I just had to make sure that everybody, you know what I mean? But no, one of the things that I've seen that I've in my time here that I've noticed is pervasive with Black music across the globe. So this is in Haiti, it's here in the US, it's in Africa, it's in the DR, it's everywhere, in Jamaica, is that there's a lack of infrastructure around our artists, right? And what that means is, there was a video that I saw the other day of Teron Thomas talking about how people in music sometimes forget that this is a job. It's a job, right? I forget who it was one time that said, if everybody's trying to be on stage, who's going to man the door? Who's going to run the sound? Who's going to run the lights? Like, we can't all be the star. And there are people out there who, and unfortunately, it's kind of the gift and the curse. Those of us throughout our careers who aren't necessarily trying to jump in the spotlight kind of get chumped off a little bit because we're not jumping up to say, it's me, I'm the person, da da da. So I think it's a trial and error thing, honestly. I think that, shout out to Elliott Wilson. I think Elliott Wilson invented the star hip hop journalist, even though Elliott had the chops to back it up. Everybody doesn't necessarily do that. I think I think one, it's reminding people that you don't all have to be the artist or the producer, right? We don't all have to be in front of the camera. Some of us need to be behind the camera. I can't edit video for shit. And that no matter how great of an idea I have for something that would be in a visual format, I'm going to have to go get other people to help me because I don't know how to do that part, right? I'm not necessarily beat on being the voice of things because I know I can write a script. So I don't have to be in front of it. And for me, as people may not believe it when I say that, but for me, it's about the culture, straight up and down, right? Like, I don't want us, there's too many people that I know, too many dope people that I know that who have done amazing things. I don't want that to be lost to history. I want these stories to be told. And then I'm also the person where, I moved to the United States when I was 10. So I kind of got into hip hop later. And I've always been very, very curious about, I remember the first time I heard, Cell Therapy by Goody Mob, right? And I don't think I even knew that Atlanta was a place at the time. Cause again, I had just moved to the States, maybe 4 or 5 years before I was in Florida, and seeing the video and hearing the song, I was like, where the fuck do these people live? That's crazy, right? Or the very clear differences between the Bay Area and LA, right? As somebody who's not from either of those places, I'm always really, really curious about how do people get into it? Or if you look at a 3-6 Mafia, obviously there were people before them in Memphis doing music, but where does a 3-6 Mafia come from, right? So I think that we're at a point now where there's so many more stories to be told in every single city. There's obviously great talent in every single city. And I always tell people that I know that I'm special, but I'm not a unicorn, right? So if I'm curious, there's somebody else that's curious. There's J schools in every university has a journalism program. So many other universities have music business programs specifically. I think that it's very easy, that advice that we always give people to network laterally, network at your level. It's very easy for you to go and find, the same kid that's volunteering to shoot your video, ask them what else they can do. Make a documentary about or making of your project. And Dame, I'm sure you and I have the same problem a lot of times with these artists where we're like, okay, cool, the video is dope, but where's the BTS footage? Do you have any footage in the studio? Let's talk about this song. All of those things that you're doing are building those platforms. And that first person, Julia Beverly, Dame, right? For those of you who don't know Julia Beverly created Ozone Magazine, which for a very long time was almost the only, it was them and there was another, I think Rap Page is something that was in the South, but it was really kind of those two that really focused on Southern hip hop. And Julia did everything. Julia shot, she, was the photographer. She wrote all the stories. She edited everything. She did everything with a little bit of help. So that person that's willing to shoot your video, you don't know what else they're capable of doing. The other part of it, though, Dame, is we have to stop dick riding. Because as much as we complain about academics, how many of your artists are willing to throw $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to get a post on academics?
I honestly don't know.
Well, can I ask Tai, in your opinion? So take academics, right? Take his platform. Mm-hmm. Say an artist comes up with $3,000. What's the actual benefit that? Because I personally just don't know these new school journalists as actual curators. I mean, they're curators, but are they in the sense that say, all right, Kid Ink got put on, I would say without hot new hip hop, his career would not have taken off the way it did. So that was a direct result of his relationship with the ownership there. Are there current curators at the level of academics that can do that with artists?
At the level of academics, I don't think so.
They would have to. It would have to be like consistent. Like you can't like just basically every day or at least every week. Like everything that is, it's not a post, 2 posts, 3 posts, 4 posts, 10 posts. It has to be consistent coverage. Like
Actually, I'll take that back. I would say the two original like freestyle platforms that kind of blew up on social media, which is on, in my opinion, I think On the Radar and From the Block, have the ability.
I don't think they can make a seismic difference in anybody's career unless they already have excessive momentum. If that's somebody's introduction and they don't already have a ton of momentum, like it doesn't really matter the views. I don't think it's going to change anybody's life.
Right, but honestly, that was the case. That's always been the case, right? Like the media So originally, the media was how you connected to your audience, right? Now it's kind of more of a situation of like growing your audience or extending your reach. So you do, and even when it was you connecting with the audience, like you had to. If we take it all the way back to the early 2000s, you had to already be at a certain level for you to be able to get the attention of these platforms. So I would say in that regard, it could be those platforms. I know that they've been a point of music discovery for me in a lot of ways, but also in hip hop, there are no really there aren't any music discovery points anymore, and I think that sucks for the artist. It sucks for the culture, but it's really really hard to outside of creating your own content, which I very, very strongly advise, and maybe not spending all that money on posting it on somebody else's platform, maybe spending a third of that advertising your own content, which I strongly, strongly recommend. There aren't really a lot of spaces, but we need it.
but
We need
that
it.
so that was the point of my post. And we can wait for somebody with integrity to build a platform that you think actually cares about the culture, or people that already have the influence. Rex Life Raj, Pilo, E40, Too Short, La Russell can start something today, and hopefully it's something creative and has a compelling story around it. And if there's a commitment to it over the next 2 months, that would move the needle way faster and way further than like waiting for the next sway.
Agreed. Um, Again, with the caveat of the next sway might already be the late night radio person at your radio station. Because I know here in Atlanta, there's a couple of people that I know who have like platforms outside of what they do on their radio on air at the iHeart station here, at the Radio One station here. There are definitely people who have like their own podcast or their own whatever. Peter Rosenberg did that for years at Hot 97. And I think he still does when he does Late Night with Peter Rosenberg. That's completely a platform for newer artists. I know Justin Credible does it on Sirius XM on, I think on Sundays. He has a show where I think it's called Young California or something like that, where he focuses. So there's people in your market that are already kind of doing the thing that you're doing. And I think that the solution lies in a combination of what you're saying and what I'm saying, which is that obviously whoever that person might be in the Bay Area, getting La Russell in for an interview, getting E40 in for an interview is going to give them the validity to jump into something else. Now, another day I could come back and talk to you about how I feel like a lot of really great platforms are not maximizing the amazing content that they're getting, but that's another conversation for another day. But I just feel like the artist being kind of the person leading that becomes convoluted, because as much as I've ever heard about La Russell, I don't know that La Russell is really putting me on to somebody else, me personally. And that may be because I'm way over here and I'm not watching it enough.
I'm actually more interested in the people that La Russell has on his platform than La Russell himself. Respect to La Russell, but he's put me on to people that I like very much listen to. But I think it's like, I think it's a tough thing because we're speaking in like the metrics of what used to be. And it's like the internet is so siloed. Generation, like Gen Z is not interested in a definitive voice, they almost like push back against that. So it's like even shaping culture looks different now because people aren't looking for a singular source. Like when I first started in the industry, Pigeons and Planes was it. We got featured in Pigeons and Planes twice and had Def Jam hitting us. So that's why I don't necessarily agree that it's apples to apples with like On the Radar and like Off the Porch equivalent to like blog era stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
wasn't the only thing. And the reason that we got the deal was because there was a lot more business behind it, a lot more momentum and stuff. But we still like got shots, not just from Def Jam, but RCA, like, you know what I'm saying? A bunch of
Yeah.
300 people reaching out. So I just think that like talking through infrastructure, I agree with Dame that an artist focused infrastructure makes a lot of sense in the era that people have decelebritized people and individuals. And so like they will say, if you are a prominent artist, you are now a trusted source. Or if you decide to become a trusted source as an artist, you don't have to look for other things to carry you. But infrastructure also relies on the conglomerate of the people. And if the people haven't agreed to be a part of the infrastructure, then it'll never last. Like people have bought into Off the Porch and have bought into On the Radar to a degree, but the reason that they bought into On the Radar was not because of Gabe, respectfully, is because of Ice Spice. Ice Spice really put On the Radar on the map, and then Drake, and then Central C. I think those are the three first major artists. It was an independent artist, the biggest Canadian star, and then the biggest international star. He got them within like a 3-month period after he had been doing it for like 2 years, and then it just blew the platform up. And now he's like the independent GOAT. But truth be told, Ice Spice got a lot more from that platform than a Sayanka who was just on there. Her episode did really great. Zaya Bell was just on there. Episode did really great, but it's not doing much for them except for keeping them relevant to their own audience. It's not expanding their personal audience right now. And I think that's because infrastructures rely on the people. So if you have the people, it makes sense for you to start the infrastructure. And I'm saying this from a place of like discovery myself. I'm building infrastructure in Austin between culture and the government, and like I'm the bridge right now between Black people and the city of Austin. And so like I took my music business experience to go to build a fan base and a cult following, and did the same thing. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I'm just saying I understand where Dame is saying that you need a catalytic leader. There will never be another Sway because the internet is so siloed and radio doesn't have the type of dynamic power that it used to have. There won't even be another Charlemagne, to be honest. He's the last of a certain breed of people because of the way that the world works. So I think like the curators who are doing playlists, I think the people who are doing the content online, I think a lot of the people on TikTok and Instagram are the future of what we're looking for. But I also think that music has been de-emphasized. It's not a central part of everybody's life anymore, whereas it used to be kind of second nature to ask people about music. Now you can ask somebody and they'll be like, oh, I haven't listened to music in a minute. I've been listening to these podcasts, or I've been programming my AI, or do you know what I'm saying? There's so many varied interests that I don't know that it's an infrastructure issue even. I think it's just an attention deficit.
I think it's both. I think and I totally agree with you. And again, I just want to reemphasize, I don't 1000% disagree with Dame at all. Like, I think that in what you just said, yeah, we don't, I'm not saying that we need another Sway. And to be 1000% honest, like as big as Sway is, there's a lot of people who did not know or do not know who he is, as much as, like Big Tigger has been on the radio forever and was on Rap City. There's a lot of people who don't necessarily know who he is. So I don't think it's a matter of, and I think that we do better when the journalists are not the focus, right? So I think that the platforms, I also think that, Kai St-Louis proves, and like his whole crew prove that these kids do still value, celebrity in a certain way. It just looks a little different, right? And I think that like everybody kind of goes to their own thing. And that's always been the case, right? Like if you were a vibe person back in the day, you were a vibe person. You weren't necessarily a Source or XXL person, right? Like that's always kind of been the case. I refuse. I'm very hesitant at us just kind of allowing the music to just be the background, because all of these things are still using music to kind of power each other in a way. I just think that, it's somebody's got to be able to kind of bring those two sides to the table, right? So maybe it is just a person that comes in and maybe looks at ways that, or audiences that La Russell isn't necessarily reaching, because again, a completely East Coast girly with a couple friends in LA, I know La Russell for La Russell. I know he does events in his backyard, and I know that he was on rap shit, and I saw, you know what I mean? Like, I understand the concept of what he's done, but I don't
Wait,
know.
Cos La Russell was on rap shit?
Yeah, they did an episode where they went to his
That's so
backyard. They went
wild
to the
because I
hood.
loved rap shit, and I don't even remember that, but I never remember
See,
shows
and
from
that's
that.
what I'm saying. Like, we need aggregators. That's really what it is. I guess that's really what I'm
I
saying. It's like, we
completely
need
agree with that.
aggregators to
That
amplify.
facts.
I'm the one that made that connection happen for him to be on rap shit.
Look at that.
That's fire, Dave. Okay, dope.
Yeah, look, I mean, I would want the version of media that you desire. I got, if there's people that I could support, maybe even sponsor from Two Law, whatever. But like, I would never encourage an artist to wait around for this. Like, artists have so much power in their hands right now, so much influence right now that, even if it's not about curating the culture, it's really just about cross promoting and sharing fan bases and just building a coalition of artists that supports each other. That was one thing I tried to do, like very early days, Funk Volume. Once Hobson got 100,000 followers on Facebook, I tried to reach out to 10 other people that have 100,000 followers. And I said, hey, let's just commit to sharing each other's content. Like, and I couldn't get by that. The tough thing is not, not the money. It's really just finding people that can relax their ego to buy in and commit to a bigger cause, even if it definitely will individually positively impact you. They can't see that. They're like, I'm not sharing this cat. I don't want to. They start getting in their head and getting very like individualistic.
Right.
So it's just tough. It's just tough to do. So in the meantime, while we're trying to sort that
But
out,
let me say this.
artists
I do
work with
agree
each
with
other
you.
and
Like,
build your own platforms.
as a former publicist and as somebody who works in marketing, what made me leave PR was kind of understanding that, this, especially because as somebody who worked with emerging artists, was the lack of media real estate that was available to emerging artists, right? Like, when it got to a point where I was introducing Damani to media in 2019, and people were not caring about Damani Harris, who raps his ass off and is T.I.'s son, and I couldn't get people to care about him. I knew it was a problem. Um, so I 1000% agree that, like, what works now is creating your own content, right? Through all of these platforms, you have a way to share it. Each of these platforms has a better way for you to, or like a different way for you to put that information out. It also gives you the ability to control the information that you're putting out. And then it maybe creates an opportunity for somebody else to be grabbing that information, because I know that, when I worked in digital media, that's what we do. We aggregate content, right? Like, we go around and kind of find something, and we hope to find something that nobody else has really gotten on. I'll go through and listen to the entire episode of The Breakfast Club and maybe highlight the part that they didn't use as the clip that everybody else has reposted, right? So it is like, I'm definitely not saying for the artist to wait around. I'm definitely not saying that part. What I am saying is that as a culture, as a whole, like, we need to figure out exactly what you said, Dame. We need to figure out a way to not put so much weight on the artists themselves. In that, somebody in the artist camp should be the person that's kind of figuring out what part of that story should be told, right? And then maybe that person becomes something bigger, or, the same people who are curating playlists can also go through and reshare some of the content that some of the artists on their playlists are posting, without everybody being ego driven, without everybody looking for a bag, without everybody trying to charge you $6,000 to talk to you when really their audience is smaller than yours, and they're just going to take half of that and run ads on the content anyway.
Yeah.
So
And we can, I know we've been on this topic for a minute and it's a good topic, but ultimately I think we're just talking about two separate things, right? You're taking a more journalistic approach to this, and I'm really just about like sharing fan bases, right? Like like again, if LaRussell, E40, Pilo got together and they just dropped a song every Friday with a visual and a story behind it. Now, I'm not talking about curating the entire culture and like, talking about what happens and gossiping and things like that. It's just keep the focus on the art, brand it a certain way, tell a certain story, be consistent with that. That would help get the music outside of and then invite other dope artists that they feel are in the same headspace, but in different cities, invite them into that circle. That gets the music outside of the Bay Area. Ultimately, that's the goal that, that Rex Life Raj is trying to accomplish, right? How do you get the music further beyond the Bay? And I just think collectively they can do that. But I think you're looking at it more from a journalistic perspective, like building platforms that curate the culture and things like that. I see it as kind of two separate things, both healthy conversations, but two separate things in my mind.
I think that the part that connects them is that for the idea that you have to be effective, E40 or Pilo or LaRussell is not the person in charge of shooting, editing, of identifying who the artists are in the other city, of coordinating those recordings. You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
what I'm saying is, like, yes, as the artist, create your content. But as you're doing that, pay attention to the fact that there's the person who has an eye, who understands what you're doing, and that person can then tell whatever story you want them to tell. But I think
Right.
it's really, really important in each of these cities, like you said. And I've had the same thought often about like the lack of cross collaboration between artists, right? Like in every city, there's that one venue that does all the indie rap shows. So why aren't you going to all the other cities and tapping the indie artists to do, you know what I'm saying? And that's where that lack of infrastructure comes from, right? Is because when you're the artist and you have to record your music and you have to figure out a way to pay for all of these things, you don't necessarily have the bandwidth to think about those extra layers. And that's, I've always told people that, like, I'm good at things that anybody could be good at, but you only have 24 hours in a day, and you can't do the thing that you only could do and the thing that I can do at the same time.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but I do agree with you at a base, and I'm here to support. And, if you want to connect me with Raj, or I don't know if you have a connection with him. I know you put out a call to him in the video that you posted.
Nah, I'm just a fan. I was just commenting. Like I've spoken to his manager before, but I've never met him. I just have heard that complaint, not just out of the Bay. Every city has that complaint, and I just think they can take matters into their own hands. So, Ty, I don't know if you want to stick around for any other topics, or if you got to peace out. Maybe
Gotta go get to work, but I really
okay.
appreciate you having me here, and I hope I can come back.
For sure. Appreciate you joining us.
Ty, is
Thank
one
you so much.
RPM starting something in Atlanta for artists?
Tai St-Louis is starting something in one in the
You
world
gotta do
for
another
artists.
bleep, Pain, another bleep.
Let's tap in. I live in
Yeah,
Austin, but I'm in Atlanta right now. I'm from Atlanta. I'm from the
I
South
see the
Side.
hat because they were
A-
yelling at me the other day because I was wearing this, and they were like, "You couldn't find a hat
South
in
Side,
Atlanta," and I was like,
ATLing in. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, like let's tap in. I have a music org here, ATL Collective. I'm on the board of, and I run a lot of the programming. So would love to see if we can do something cool together. I have a project I'm working
"Definitely,
on, so I'll get Dame to connect us. But thank you for being here.
of course." Thank you for having me.
See ya.
Peace out.
Cool. I know that took up a lot of time, and we have some other topics that we want to get into. I don't know what people's time constraints are today.
I get kicked out of my room in 23 minutes. I can still keep going, but I got to move my whole setup.
All right. So, Erinn, what was your topic today?
My topic is, how do you find your next thing? We've been apparently encouraging people to quit over the course of this podcast in
Is
general.
that the feedback you've been getting?
Let me clarify that real fast. Dame
I'm
is
just
not.
saying, last week, Dave, literally, when I started talking,
No,
or 2 weeks ago, when I was like, keep going, Dave was
no,
like, nah,
no.
folks need to quit. And I was like, for sure, but
No,
keep
so
going.
here, let me clarify this. There definitely are a lot of people that need to quit. I don't know specifically who you are. So I'm not, if you don't have the drive, the passion, then I think you should. I'm not in no position to tell anybody that they need to quit. I'm in the position of educating people, giving people the information. So hopefully you can make that determination for yourself sooner rather than later. That's always been my goal with the MEC. So if you take the stuff that we talk about and you apply it and you are doing well for yourself, making progress, then I encourage that. I encourage you to get to your point of where you need to make a decision in your 20s rather than like 30s and 40s. Like, make the decisions quicker. Use the data that you're receiving. Be honest with yourself. So I'm not necessarily saying any particular, but in at large, there probably are a lot of people that need to quit because they're not really passionate. They're not truly into this. They want followers, they want money, it's all like, shallow stuff. They're not really willing to put in the work. Are you willing to get up and put in the hours, then go to your job, then go back from your job, and then make some beats, and then network, and then learn the business? And are you really about that? Like, most people aren't.
Oh, Dame's telling my story. Okay, so Erinn, say I'm not about waking up and juggling multiple jobs and all the comments on my YouTube channel about me are true. What's my next step?
That's exactly what I want to talk about. And it could be, because I like in our comments, a lot of people were like, I wake up and do this every day because I love it. No money needed. And I'm like, bless you. That's tight. Because I am not that person. You know what I'm saying? I'm not. But like, even for me, it was like music was by and large a diminishing return for me, like working exclusively in the music industry. When I pivoted to moving towards something else, I thought it was more culture. It's really like a culture tech hybrid. I now make most of my money in music, which is really interesting because I try to tell people I'm not in music, but then I look at my incoming money every month and I'm like, well, most of my income still comes from music, but it's like way more than it used to be because I pivoted the direction that I was in and I'm flowing with different people. So like, I just wanted to see if there were practical steps for us to give people, because even though you just said you're not encouraging people to quit, you're basically saying most people should quit because you're like, most people aren't passionate about it. And I agree with this. I think most people are trying to deal with childhood wounds or self-aggrandize or find some level of significance and importance in a world that emphasizes being chronically celebrated for mediocrity. And so I think that there's a need for people to have like, okay, well, if I'm not supposed to be this rapper or not supposed to be a singer and I'm really passionate about it, like what is the way that I move towards either finding a passion or developing a skill set that doesn't kill my soul? You know what I'm saying? Because it may not, everything is not a passion play. And that's something that I think that people need to know. I don't think Dame is extremely passionate about showing up to the Two Lost office every day, but he is passionate about independent music. I don't think Payne is passionate about making a YouTube video every day, but he's passionate about giving producers resources. So I think even like helping people change their mind to understand that everything isn't, I jumped out of bed and I'm hyped to be alive today. Like Teron Thomas talks about how he goes to the studio every day to write because he's super excited. He's an anomaly even amongst people like us who have made it full time. So I just wanted to know if y'all had any specific practical advice. Mine is very like feelings and emotion based, and I have a couple of thoughts. But Dame and Payne, I wanted to, or I guess now Dame, I wanted to know if you had any practical advice for moving into something new or maybe even adjacent. Like, I don't feel like I'm completely removed Like, even though I just said I make most of my money in the music industry, and I'm working on music projects consistently, but just
Yeah.
in a different way. I don't feel like I'm fully removed from the thought process of music, but a lot of my future earnings are going to come from adjacent things that I've learned in the industry and just adapted to other places.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen people that just don't listen to the advice of the people around them, which, okay, fine. It's tough because I think every great creative has been told to quit, especially at the beginning. And especially, like you have this career trajectory where it starts down here and then you go up and then there's a dip. And, there are all these moments at which you feel like quitting and people are telling you to quit because it's not working out, and then something changes because you've put in the work and you are talented. You just haven't figured out how to fully realize your talents and apply them, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always tough to know whose opinion on your career is valid. But I think after a certain point, you have to start being more realistic and saying, damn, I've been doing this for 15 years and there's no progress. That's why goal setting is so important. That's why having benchmarks is so important, because if you are living life without goals or benchmarks, you can't evaluate or assess your progress. And therefore, there's nothing tangible telling you, number one, what's working, number two, if anything's working. Because if nothing's working, if you're not meeting your benchmarks, if you're not meeting your small goals and your large goals, then something's wrong with you. You need to quit, you need to pivot, or you need something very different. You need more structure. Something has to change. So I'm not saying just listen to everyone who's saying, you should give this up. I'm saying the universe and the people around us will implicitly respond well to things that we do well. I know artists who were amazing videographers because out of necessity, they learned how to shoot their own music videos and they just became great at that. Some of them pivoted. Some of them clung to their rap dreams. And I'm like, you could be working. I mean, the amount of things that you learn about videography and directing and editing and all that, you could be shooting feature length films right now. You could be in an entirely different arena with people that value this talent of yours, and yet you're just not fully realizing your potential. And maybe it's just because you're good at that, but you're not passionate about video. I don't know. But I think, Ty brought up the Teron Thomas video. Yeah, people forget it's a job. And so at your job, you're constantly being evaluated. And if you're not performing well at that job, well, someone's going to tell you, and it's going to have consequences on your life. In music, a lot of people, because we are our own bosses, we're our own managers, we're our own supervisors, we're our own coworkers. And so we have to be our own source of feedback and criticism. Otherwise, we're going to be directionless.
Just again, one more time, defending what I said before. You can hear, the thing is, you can hear what I said and be like, oh shit, like I don't have the energy and the passion. Like I need to step my shit up. Some people will hear it and be encouraged that, all right, I've been operating on level 5 when I really need to be on 8. So I got to turn this shit up. So it'd be encouraged to stick with it. Or you could hear that and be like, you know what? I get up. I don't really want to do this. I am in this for the wrong reasons. And then you can quit. So you can look at it one or two ways. But in terms of answering your question, like I'm data driven too, right? Like if I was working on Funk Volume or working with Ja and I see that like things are starting to stop, the numbers are starting to go up, maybe they start going down. I see that less people are interested in having a conversation with us when I'm reaching out to people for partnerships or potential, sponsorships or potential partnership opportunities. Once I see the traction start to slow, we have to figure out what we need to do differently. And I think the word I used a few weeks ago is like, I'm just relentless. Like I'm going to try so many different things to keep that momentum going. And luckily, like I've never experienced like just complete stagnation. Like, because
That's fire.
I'm gonna figure some shit out. Like, and we have so many different ideas. Like, even right now, like he's comes back tomorrow. He's shooting a show. I'm writing a music series. We already have another show that we're pitching and trying to get support for. There's just so many irons in the fire that, like, it's impossible to me. It's impossible for us to lose unless, you know, something catastrophic or just weird happens, you know. But that's the relentlessness you need to have. It ain't always fun. Like, I'm thinking about this shit all the time. It's probably unhealthy most of the time. But to me, especially in entertainment, that's the kind of energy you have to have in order to get to where you say you want to be. And if you're getting tied up because, oh man, I don't feel like posting today, or I don't know what to post today. How you don't know what to post today? Like, what? Like, that means you don't even know your own story. Like, you just
No, I mean,
lack
look, that
creativity. If you
all
don't
of that
have
is
that energy,
true.
then you need to pivot.
But the other, to add to that, and this is me becoming even more of a villain than Dame, you're just soft as fuck if you can't handle some of this little shit. Like, I had Dame's
Me,
friend went on a whole hour long rant with his people about what they were going to do to me when they saw me, how I'm a broke ass bitch, how I'm mentally ill. And I just had to say, and this happens to me every other week, it seems like, because this is the internet. And this is a part I didn't sign up for. The regular shit is hard enough. Flying out to places. I was doing label runs. I was in the street selling CDs. People were cussing me out to my face because I was trying to sell a CD for $5. All of these things, people can't. I'm like, how are you? If you can't handle criticism on the internet, or if you can't handle low view counts initially, or if you can't handle, minor rejection, I don't even know how you're going to survive in life. But how are you going to survive in the music business where things are so cutthroat and toxic and this and that? I mean, that's how the world is, but especially in the music business, it's perceived as such. And so people act accordingly, for better or worse. How are you going to survive that? I see a lot of people who just won't. And I think at that point, we all need therapy. It's not always a healthy space to work in, but I'll be damned if I'm going to tell you, yeah, the fact that you're ready to quit, the fact that you're ready to get emotional and react to every little thing that comes, every little bit of adversity that comes your way, that's a good sign. It's not a good sign. It's not. And so, cool, be mad at Dame all you want. Like, it's valid to be mad at Dame. I think everyone on the planet at one point has been mad at Dame. But
I've never been mad at Dame.
to look at Dame, and Erin's the only one, to look at what Dame's saying and say, man, fuck Dame. He's just trying to discourage me, and I feel discouraged, and it's working, and Dame is going to make me quit. And you know what? I just give up. You were supposed to quit.
Exactly.
It's just not for you.
So, okay, I'm with y'all. So what next? You know what I'm saying? Because I think there's character traits that define people that genuinely will have you're just a quitter. But there are some people who have gotten lost in the sauce or lost in the dream, and they're like, oh, damn, I need to quit music, or maybe quit my pursuit of music as like my full-time thing, or as even a reasonable means. But what is my next step? That's what I'm saying. Because I think even for me, when I decided to stop managing, like, I had a thought 2 or 3 years before, like, I'm not going to be doing this forever. And then when it came time for me to quit, I was like, damn, I'm about to quit managing. And it was almost a shock to me. And then I was like, what's next? And I had to look at what was in front of me. And I was so uninspired. The way that I decided to quit management, and then the way that it happened 6 months later was not how it was planned. And I left with holding a pile of shit, and I was super hurt. So for me, I went away and literally just worked on an artist team and did odd jobs. I lifted for like a year just to get some inspiration. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm like, well, I could just pay off some debt and be sad. And I just be driving. You know what I'm saying? This was like part of 2022 and 2023. maybe like half of each of those years, I was just lifting and driving and sad. And I was working on an artist team. All my bills were paid and I was just like not enthused. And it took me that long to get to the next phase because all of my context had been planning for or around my artist or around my company that was artist centered. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you're in it, like it may take a minute to make some differences and it may take a minute. I didn't know what I was passionate about for a minute. Like I'm passionate about people. I had poured all my resources, time and energy into people in the music industry. And I was like, I don't want to manage and I don't think I want to be in the music industry. So I'm talking about not head ass people who really shouldn't have been here in the first place, not folks who drop every frequently and haven't kicked themselves into high gear to get to their level of greatness, but people who genuinely have some gumption, as my father would say, about them and can stay motivated, who may just need like a swift kick in the ass to be like, yo, you should get off this because it's a diminishing return. Like I was making more lifting than I was in the music industry. The things that had paid me while I was in the music industry was consulting. I took a little break from that. When I decided to stop lifting and started consulting, I was like, what the hell? I don't even really work that often and I'm really making a living. You know what I'm saying? Like these are all things that took me a minute to like get on my feet. So I'm asking y'all, could we have like maybe one or two practical things? Because Dame, you talk about how you have all these projects with Job, but like some people are solo, they're just artists, which I think is a mistake anyways. We've been talking about collaboration, but for me, I collaborated so much. I had a lot of people calling my phone, even in the music industry, who wanted music adjacent stuff or music consulting. So I never had a dry season. Even me driving was just to get out the house because I was crying so much, but my bills were paid. And I was like, let me just think and drive and breathe and get outside and talk to regular people.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but this is why I always encourage artists to pursue music the right way, right? And again, when I talk about that, that's networking, that's educating yourself, that's learning marketing. Because if you learn the skill sets to thrive as an artist, you can use that same skill set and apply it to a lot of other things, right? So it's easier to pivot if you have an idea for something else. And for managers in particular, I always encourage managers to have something else that you're doing on the side anyway. You know, you should constantly be in explore mode, just being super proactive. There's so much stuff in the world where you can make money. Like, and you just have to uncover those opportunities, listen to podcasts, read books. You have to really explore what's out there and have some honest conversations with yourself about what are you really passionate about? What will you put the work into? You know, when you have those conversations and you continue to explore, continue to network, continue to look under every rock and just see what's out there, hopefully you land on a few things. And at the very least, you learn what you don't want to do, right? I started out as an internal auditor for Wells Fargo, right? It was cool. I got to travel, and at a young age, I got to tell people that I'm here on business, and that was kind of fun to say. But like, it was a terrible job, so I don't want to do that. Then I got a job at Goldman Sachs in their operations division in London. It was cool being in London at that time of my life, but what I was doing was terrible. I definitely didn't want to do that long term. Go back to business school. Thought I was going to investment management. Got two internships in investment management. One in Chicago, one in Atlanta. In between my years of business school, thought I was going into that. That wasn't cool. So I graduated. I just kept. You gotta stay active. And even if you find out that you don't want to do that, at least you can X that off the list and get to something else. You just got to stay active. So,
Ain't any thoughts for you before I have to jump?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest thing is just try new things. You know, when new technology comes out, when new opportunities arise, use your power of discernment. Obviously, you don't have to do everything, but try something and see how it goes. And if it clicks with you, it clicks with you. But I think a lot of people aren't trying new things. They're doing the same things over and over again. They're spinning their wheels. Those things aren't working. And sometimes all that's going to take is a small spark to ignite something new. And it could be an entirely new trajectory just because you tried something different. So the context of all this is I see this video right after Billboard announces the top producers of the 21st century. And I think, the 21st century is only 25 years in. So why are we already doing this? But, why not? The world might not exist 25 years from now. So as I'm reading that article and, seeing, Timbaland's on it, Jack Antonoff is on it. I think the number one producer is Max Martin, just based on credits on top charting songs, which makes sense because he's like the finisher on every Taylor Swift song, every pop record. As that's happening, this video comes up, which is something that echoes what Timbaland said on his producer grind interview. And a lot of people have said this, so-and-so used to get $100,000 a beat, $200,000 a beat, $1 million a beat. You hear it all the time. And it's always in response to the current state of online beat selling, beat leasing specifically. You're selling an exclusive beat for $200 and you're leasing a beat for $20. Man, they used to get $250K for a beat. They used to get $500K for a beat. So this is Scarface on Club Shay Shay, I believe, talking about that.
They make a beat for $200 now. I'm not lying, but I know back in the gap, a Dr. Dre beat was $250,000. Timbaland beat was $150,000-$200,000. Wow. As the Neptunes and all of them, that shit was high.
Yeah.
So it would be shameful to get a beat from these top-notch producers and then have to put your shit on a stream and wait for it to stream.
Right.
4,000 stream, a million streams is $4,000.
What?
Yeah. 1 million streams is $4,000.
So I feel like Scarface said two different things. One, he said beats used to cost more, and then named, like the top producers in the genre. And then he also said, well, it would be a shame to spend that much on a beat and then not get any sort of return on that incredibly high investment. He's not necessarily taking a stance either way, but people interpreted this as him saying, oh, isn't that messed up that beats have lost their value? And I think he's speaking more just on the changes in the music business, which I think is what should really be the focus of this conversation. The big thing for me is like, I wasn't around, so I never saw $250,000 checks for beats. And I don't necessarily, people say that. I'm sure it's happened before. I'm sure it's happened many times, especially when you're talking about a Dr. Dre, a Timbaland, a Pharrell. They were at the top of their genres, multiple genres. What am I saying? Pop music, R&B, hip hop. Of course they can demand $250,000, especially after they have a run of hits. I don't think their first 10 beats were getting that type of money. I don't think every single beat that they sold got that type of money, especially when they're acting as the label heads. They had their own respective imprints, especially when they're developing an artist, that kind of thing. But someone at their level who's already rich, especially already highly successful, already sought after, they can demand that. And at the time in the industry, there were very few producers. And when you look at the producers, they always name in these conversations, they're these top. It'd be like saying, well, Dr. Luke gets X amount of dollars. There are very few Dr. Luke's in the business. If you need a pop hit today, you go to Circuit, you go to Max Martin. An independent artist can't afford either of them. They're making hits for Taylor Swift. So in the early 2000s, beat making, home recording, all of that became super cheap, and it changed the market forever. It created all this accessibility. It created a lot of output, and it created what people call saturation. So today, if you make beats, the average major label advance that you're going to get is around $10,000. Would $10,000 help you right now? I'm sure it would. If you're delivering a whole project with an artist or a single that's already gone viral with an artist, you're probably going to get more than $10,000. So I think the conversation is being misunderstood by the average viewer. They look at a $24 beat lease and say, man, this should cost $200,000. Realistically, it shouldn't. I don't think it should. And also realistically, a lot of these dudes, Pharrell, Dre, Timbaland, they're making a killing off of endorsements, non-musical endeavors. Timbaland obviously has Suno, but he had partnerships with other companies. He had B Club. Dre had Beats by Dre. He became a billionaire after that. Pharrell works for Louis Vuitton. So let's be real. These guys don't really need your money. So why do they keep coming up as the metric for people like me and you? And I'm talking to the producers who are watching this right now. Timberland might be watching this. I know he's active in the community. I doubt anyone else is, but the producers who are watching this, why is it helpful for us to go back to an era we weren't a part of and say, damn, they used to get paid these three producers got paid $250,000 a beat. And what does that have to do with right now when we're talking about me selling beats to, some 22-year-old artist who's rapping in between college classes, or a 35-year-old artist who's a construction worker and has 3 kids and is rapping to stay sane?
I feel like you're probably like one of the best people to speak to this, though, because you live on both sides of the spectrum. Not the 250K, but you're still doing platinum records that are getting, I'm not counting your pockets. I don't want to throw out numbers, but you're doing, 5 and probably some 6-figure, well, at least 4 to 5 figure sales on
beats. For advances, 5 figures.
For like label artists, but you're also doing the flash sales where you can get, what is it like? I think you did one where you got 3 beats for $25, whatever. So I would like, instead of the question of what does that have to do, I want to kind of like ask you, why do you feel like both is important? Because I think that there's a lot of people who could learn from you. Some producers are nervous that if they sell on a BeatStars, they'll never get to the point where they can do a $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 beat, but they don't know that you can live in both worlds.
I mean, you should live in both worlds. You work with the people around you, and sometimes things change. The same way a rapper that is now getting 50,000 for a show didn't get 50,000 for their first show. They probably got nothing for their first show. It's probably volunteer work just to get their name out. It's like your starting salary at a job. You don't start at the highest level because you don't have that experience level. You don't have that kind of resume. It's just kind of the natural order of things in in society. And so I don't know why that always surprises us, but it somehow surprises us. Like, I see these conversations where someone's talking to their little nephew and they're like, yeah, he's been making beats for a year and he's supposed to be making 200,000, but he's on BeatStars. I'm like, come on, man. No, he's not. So, I think, I think what's important is what makes sense for your revenue model. There are producers who went from industry to the internet. There are producers who went from the internet to the industry, like a Taz Taylor. Internet money is ironically doing huge. Like, they're still on the internet, but beat leasing isn't really their bread and butter. They're working on these big projects, and they're operating the capacity of a label, more or less. And then there are people who do both. And I think whatever works for you is whatever works for you. It's just that if you aspire to only make beats for these high ticket artists, like right out the gate, like my whole goal is to work with Taylor Swift. I need to produce the next Taylor Swift single. It's going to be tough. I'm not saying you can't do it, but how are you going to make money in the meantime?
The people having this conversation are getting frustrated. You are the people that need to quit. All you guys need to quit. Industries evolve, right? There's always going to be something to complain about in the music industry, right? If there wasn't so many people releasing music, the budget would be bigger and they would be able to pay, $250,000 a beat, right? Because right now Spotify pays out, it's a market share payout, but there's tens of millions of artists on the platform. If there was only 1,000 people on the platform and it was gatekept and all that money was divvied out via market share, those thousands of artists would be making millions of dollars. Then they would have the budget for a $200,000 beat. But no, because if you were in that time, you would be complaining about, oh, how come only a few producers get to get paid $100,000 a beat? How come I can't get my music out there? So no, now you have Spotify, and you can use Lost, use the promo code MEC, get your music on over 450 DSPs around the world. So if you're complaining, this is just how industries evolve. Sometimes, maybe they were making more money per beat back in the day, but it was a different business model, and it would have been gate kept, and you would have had a whole other list of issues that you would be complaining about. At the end of the day, you're just a complainer, and if you're worried about these conversations, you are the people that I'm talking to that should quit and pivot, like Erinn suggests.
That's a good point, because I would love to hear from the producers who, it's not like there weren't a bunch of producers back then. There were. I want to know what kind of money, what kind of money was a DJ Unique making per beat? What kind of money was a Legendary Trackster making per beat? What kind of money were the Beats by the Pound beats getting from an Advance? Because all those projects were different. And when you look at the projects that are Pharrell was producing, him and Chad were producing for Madonna at that point. You know what I mean? So that's a little different from working in the No Limit system. But people look at these video clips and they're like, oh, wow, back in the 90s, everyone made $250,000 a beat, or I would have made $250,000 per beat back then. And it's like, that's not really, I don't think so, no.
Of course not. But again, if you're on this level of conversation and you're frustrated by it, then you have a lot of learning to do, or you have some pivoting to do.
Well, that being said, pivot your way to tolost.com and try things out in the market, because if you don't start today, when are you going to start? 3 free months of free music distribution. The best way to test out your music is by putting it out. That's what I always say. You can always make more. You should always make more. Otherwise, what are we even talking about? Yeah. So we appreciate you tuning in. Thank you. Shout out to the co-working space for not physically removing Erinn from her podcasting cube. And shout out to Tai. Shout out to Dame for bringing her on. And we will catch you on the next episode right here on MEC, where we give it because we live it.
Let me promote something real quick. My bad, y'all.
My bad. I take that back. No peace.
If you're in Atlanta on September 4th, I'll be co-hosting a songwriters preview event at City Winery. It's for some of the songwriters who showcase or who wrote at Camp Collective, the camp that I run with my org every May. We do like a songwriters review in September, so they'll be performing the music live. It's a fundraiser for the org, so tickets are $25, but it's a really beautiful venue. City Winery right downtown. So if you're in Atlanta, please pull up. I would love to see you. Come support the arts. Come support Atlanta writers, and come see some dope performances.
There it is. All right, y'all. We out. Peace.